How's it going? Today we're going to talk about arches. Again, because the first video I did with the arches, it had a lot of motion sickness inducing properties, such as quick panning of left to right, and I am redoing that video. So hopefully this one turns out better. Anyway, let's get to it. So, one of these things is not like the other. Let's discuss why and what the best option is, at least in my opinion. Now what we have here is a pair of types of arches. There's 5 arches total, and I have the material to build one more. I'm gonna have to get more than that actually, but for right now there's 5 arches. And out of these 5 arches, you'll notice one is black and is constructed differently. Has green on the outside, and unlike these, which have T-posts, the black one does not have T-posts. You'll notice the black one is taller and slightly wider than the ones with T-posts as well. That is because the black one, the feet of it are embedded in the beds as opposed to these, which aren't. So, here are pros and cons of the different systems and what they are. So this one here, this black one, isn't really an arch. I mean, it is an arch, right? It makes an arch shape. Let me back up just slightly. There we go. There's your arch shape. But it's not an arch, and that's because the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed this isn't one arch. This is 3 arches. This is the same kind of arch that you would see if you were to go to like a school dance and they have a spot where you can take pictures, or like a wedding archway or something like that. This is not meant to be super long term. It's not meant to be super sturdy, but this was my prototype. See, when I first started thinking about how I would really like to have arches looking down this pathway here, I thought to myself, well, it would be really nice if I could do cattle panel arches using T-posts and cattle panels, which that's the other method. That's the silver or gray, I guess, with T-posts that you see several of. But at the time, I could not get those. The Tractor Supply near me kept saying they were out of stock on them. You can't order a 16-foot cattle panel off of Amazon, turns out. Home Depot doesn't carry them. Lowe's doesn't carry them. Like, nowhere carried them locally. I couldn't get them. And the nearest one, I think, was somewhere in southeastern Michigan. And I don't have a vehicle that will go that far and be able to carry something 16 feet long. I drive a Kia Rio. It is a tiny car. It does not have much oomph. It's just not made for that sort of thing. So because of that, I'm like, okay, what can I get that they can ship in little pieces, or that I can pick up somewhere and go from there? You know, I can build it myself and do what needs done. And I'm like, you know what? Those wedding arches, that might work. So let's order it and find out. So I ordered several because they were on sale when I ordered them. And yeah, I got 3 of them, and I'm like, okay, these are wobbly, they're not great. I needed something to tie them together, and that's where this green mesh comes in. Now the green mesh, hardware cloth of some variety. This stuff is great. I love this stuff. This stuff is fantastic. These, though, I mean, I'm honestly kind of surprised this is still standing, and I'll show you why. So, let's go to this side. All right. So, here's the problem. This stuff, this is made, I'm not looking at the camera. Okay. So, here's the problem, okay? Come on, there we go. You can see I've got a bit of rust. Rust isn't a good sign, because this rust showed up, this corrosion showed up, and we'll move up to this one. As you can see there, that corrosion, especially right there, right? That corrosion showed up right away. Within a couple weeks, that was already visible. And the problem with these is these tubes aren't sealed properly. They're not a type of metal that's corrosion resistant. And they're thin. This is very thin-walled, like iron or something. I don't know what this is really made out of. It's not aluminum. It's some form of iron because it can rust. So and it rusts, you know, the orange rust we associate with iron, as opposed to aluminum oxide, which is the white powdery film you see on aluminum when it, I guess, rusts, but really it's just oxidation. Anyway, this isn't a chemistry lesson. So, yeah, these things, they were real wobbly before I put the mesh on them, and they hold together now. Okay, like here, we'll do a little shake test, and I'll show you what I mean. So here is the whole thing, okay? I'm going to take one finger, okay, I got that one finger right there, and I'm just going to push lightly. See how much this whole thing wobbles? I am tapping very, very lightly. This thing is not very sturdy. It's going to hold together pretty well, but I think it's only going to hold together well because of the green mesh that's on it and the fact that it is zip tied together with, gosh, I don't know how many zip ties. But if you think each intersection has at least 3 zip ties, or 4, depending on the intersection, maybe even more, depending. There's a lot of zip ties here. There's probably 100 zip ties on this, holding it together to the mesh. So it's okay. It's kind of sturdy, but it's wobblier than I would like, and it really just doesn't hold up super well. I do not expect to get more than another year out of this, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a little surprised it's still standing. So let's go to the method that I'm going to be using from this point forward. Oh, also there should be a mention of cost here. This style, if each of these arches, these individual black arches, was $30, say even $25 on Amazon or wherever you'd get them. Let's say they were $25 a piece, you got them on sale. Because they're actually, I think they were a bit more than that. So that's 3 of them at $25 for our hypothetical situation here. That's $75, and then the spool of green stuff was, I want to say that was around $30, and I used like half of it, maybe a third of it, something like that. So we'll add another $10. We'll say it was a third of 30, so $10. So that's $85, and then, you know, $5 for a pack of UV resistant zip ties. So that brings us up to about $80 on the cheapest side possible. No, that's not right, because it was 75 plus 80. That brings us $90. On the cheapest side possible, this one is about $90, and this took a lot of work, because as you can see, all of these have to be screwed together. You have to build this thing yourself from little tiny pieces, and it took a while. It took me, I don't know, maybe 3 hours to put this together. So it was a bit of work, not hard work. I mean, I was just screwing, you know, very lightweight poles together, but this was time consuming. And for the lack of stability and the cost involved, this is not the way I will do it in the future. Now, if you want something that's going to last, this right here is the way you do it. This is a 16-foot cattle panel that is 4 feet, so it's 16 foot wide by 4 feet tall. And you get this and 4 T-posts. The cattle panel was maybe $16 to $18 at Tractor Supply when they finally had them in stock. I went with my father. He drives a very large vehicle, unlike me. And so we were able to go get a pack of these. Not a pack, you don't buy them in a pack. I mean, maybe you do if you're a farmer or a rancher. I am neither, so I bought them individually at about $16 a piece. Anyway, moving on. So $16 for the cattle panel and 4 T-posts, each of which, these are 6 foot tall T-posts driven into the ground, approximately 1.5 feet or so. Those were $8 a piece. So if you figure, we'll round them all up, round all of it up. So 4 T-posts at $10 a piece is $40, plus the cattle panel is $20. That brings us up to $60. So already it's 66% of the cost of the previous archway. These arches will likely outlast me. These cattle panels look exactly the same as they did when I bought them. The T-posts have a hint of wear on the corners. You know, you got a little bit of rust there. But this method is just far sturdier. Far sturdier, far longer lasting. The only drawback is that you have to be able to get a 16-foot cattle panel into your house. Well, not into your house, but into your yard. I guess the other drawback is these require help to build unless you are one of those people that has a longer arm span. I don't, so this was really kind of funny, and I wish I had a video of it, of me trying to build these by myself. So it was interesting. Let's get to the methodology though, because like the previous example, you know, I showed you got to screw it all together, and then you zip tie it together, and then you put the mesh on and zip tie the mesh to it, and it's a process. This is way easier than that. I cannot stress how easy this is if you have help. If you don't have help, it's a little difficult because you have to be able to hold from left to right and bring the ends together, and this stuff is surprisingly sturdy, so it does not want to be compressed the way it is. It just as an example here, we're going to give it a little, I am pushing a lot harder, and as you can see, in order to get that same amount of jiggle, I have to push drastically harder to get it to move. The whole thing is just like, that's how strong that is. I'll do that one more time. It flips back right away. This is a much sturdier approach. So the way you build this, or at least the way I built it, and you know, your mileage may vary depending on the spacing you have between your beds. This is about 3.5 feet. It was supposed to be 4. I don't know what happened. I think when I did the ones that were 4, I was like, these are too far apart, so I squished them a little closer together for this part. Anyway, so that's what we're dealing with here. So anyway, your archway is going to be, for this 16-foot cattle panel, a 3.5-foot to 4-foot span would be great, because this gives you, well, we'll just give you an example here. Right? Hopefully you can see this. I'm going to go like this, and I'll put myself up against it just like this. Hold it a little steady. I have no idea how this is going to look, but as you can see, there's a bit of space above my head. So I would estimate this to be right at the top of my ability to reach, because I can reach about that tall, right, like this. And I am 5'9.5", so this is probably 7 feet, roughly. Plenty of space unless you're growing something kind of ridiculously long. I should say plenty of space unless you're growing something that hangs down a ridiculous amount. So, construction. You're going to need 2 things. Cattle panel, 4 T-posts, and I'd recommend a post driver. Those are about $30 or so. I already had one because I'm using the T-posts over there. But if you don't have one already, you can technically hammer these into the ground. I would really recommend against that. I tried that. It took 20 minutes of pounding on the stupid thing to get it to go even like several inches. The post driver is a much quicker process. So anyway, what you do to the method. You pound in your posts at approximately that spacing, which I would say the posts are about 3 feet apart. I did it so that the posts would fit cleanly between rungs of the cattle panels. So you pound them in. You could go further out to the edges. That would have worked fine. Like this one here could have gone, you know, instead of it being there, it could have been there, and that would have been fine. It really doesn't matter. You just need 2 on each side to hold things in place. You're going to pound all 4 posts in to their requisite depth, depending on the length of T-post you go with. I would go with a 6-footer because that gives you enough bracing here that if this does get in high wind, you know, there's a little bit of bracing, because you can get them where they're lower, right? But the lower the T-posts are, the worse this will wobble in a high wind. So I like these because these are about halfway. Gives it a good amount of support. And easier to deal with than the really long ones. So anyway, you pound your 4 posts in, and as you can see, got that on that side as well. And the same thing, the spacing is so that it just falls in between the different rungs, as you can see there. Then you're going to take your T-posts, not your T-post, you're going to take your cattle panel, and you're going to bring it over in the shape of the archway. Now, honestly, this is the hardest part about this. Getting this in the shape of the arch while it's not being supported by anything. If you're doing this by yourself, you got to stick one end kind of like on the ground, right? So let's say this is it. It's on the ground and it's like this. You're going to have it like that, and then you're going to have to grab the other end and bring it up. So here it is. You bring it up like this, and then up and over. So it's going to make a U shaped like that, okay? And then you got to reach down and grab that other one that's on the ground, and then flip the whole thing up like this. So if this is the archway, right? You made it, it's shaped kind of like that. You're going to pick it up, put it like this, and then you're going to carry it and sit it like that. Except it's going to be a lot taller than that, obviously, so it's a little unwieldy. These things are surprisingly strong and will resist your efforts to bend them in this fashion. So again, I recommend having help, but you can do it with one person as long as you have the proper arm span to be able to bring it down and grab it, and it's just not the easiest thing. Anyway, once you have that done, then you're going to bring it over. You're going to plop it in place, but you're going to plop it so that the ends, right? The ends are going to be outside the T-posts, or I guess inside the aisleway. They're not going to be over the T-posts like they are here. They're not going to be over the T-posts yet. They're just going to be like here and here, so it's going to be outside of all that. And you're going to have that on the same on this side as well, just like that. Then you're going to pick one side up, while the other side is going to be left over there. You're going to leave that side alone. You're going to come over here. You're going to grab this. You're going to pick this whole thing up so that the bottom clears this T-post. And you're going to slide one rung of it, so the bottommost rung, you're going to put outside the T-post aisle. So it's going to be on this side with these notches. And I should have mentioned that earlier, and I think I did that in the first video too. These notches need to be facing the beds. Oops. These notches need to be facing the beds. They need to be facing that way because this is what helps lock the T-post in place. Not the T-post, the cattle panel in place. So anyway, you do that. You slide it up so the bottommost rung is over this, and then the secondmost rung is on the inside. That is what makes this bend that you can see at the bottom. See how this goes like this? It goes from the right and then curves to the left. And as we go up, it stays to the left of the T-post. And what that does is that puts tension at the bottom and keeps it kind of locked in place. Because again, the T-post doesn't like being bent like this. It's resisting those efforts. So when you get it, you get that bottommost rung over this, you can then, and the second one, you know, you're ready to angle it so the second one is on this side. So bottom rung on this side, second rung on this side. You just bring it down until the bottom rung, it's going to slide over each of these teeth. And it's going to click when it does that. And then once you get the other rung on this side, you can just kind of come over here and make sure you do both sides at the same time. It's not actually that hard. Because again, since it's anchored in the back by tension against the T-posts, it's going to want to move, kind of both halves are going to move like this. So it shouldn't be hard to do. Once you get that done, and you have, you know, a rung or two on the inside, but the bottommost on the outside, so rung or two on the inside, bottommost on the outside, then you can just grab this whole thing like this and just yank down. Just yank it down. And it will ratchet its way down those teeth. You'll hear click, 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 click. And if you yank hard enough, it'll make it all the way down to where the teeth kind of go up against the bed there. Like that. And then you just kind of have to pull the post back like that and squeeze it past. Once it's past, you just kind of pull it the rest of the way down. Then you come over here, and that's that side done. And you just kind of do the same thing on the other side. You grab it, you pull it up like this until you are over the T-post. You keep the bottom rung on the outside of the T-post. Every other rung goes on the inside of the T-post. And then you just pull it down, do the same thing. And lock that in place. And once it's locked in place on both ends, you're done. Congratulations, you've built an archway. It took... I want to say driving the post with a post driver takes 30 seconds per post. And folding it to get it to fit takes like a minute or so, and then ratcheting it into place and carrying it around is another couple of minutes. So you can do 4 or 5 of these in probably a half an hour, whereas that green one, the green and black one, took 3 hours to build the one and is going to fall apart within a year. So anyway, I hope that's informative. And yeah, until we talk again, thanks. Good afternoon, John here. I'm trying to touch the wrong thing here. Okay.